There's a limited number that are allowed that.
And we're not going to let you in if it's closed. We're going to draw the line and be like, no cap.
All right, good to know.
No, yeah, I am jumping in.
If there are bathing suits involved, and that's probably for everybody.
You know what? Embrace it. It's the only one you've got.
That's
We
right.
just got that for our nephew's wedding, and trust me,
Wait, but that means you have a tan.
Yeah.
Something that I am
oh,
lacking.
it is, it's not, there's nothing tan about it. So if you see this, I can take this off and you would not tell the difference.
That's a rough one. Bill, better tan next time. Especially when you have to do it on 3 different devices. Because this one's a 702, this one's a 62.
Good evening, and welcome to tonight's committee meeting. We are going to start off with Environment, Public Works, Planning, Zoning, and Development. Councilwoman Mann.
Thank you, Council President. This meeting of the Environment, Public Works, Planning, Zoning, and Development Committee is called to order at 7 o'clock. We have one item on the agenda. We will be discussing an update on the equalization tank study. Megan, are you presenting first?
Hello. Sorry. We're having the presentation on Teams, so me and Kim are going to speak first, and then we're going to get into the presentation.
Okay.
So I'm just going to introduce it first. The city received $1.1 million from Congressman Max Miller to conduct this study. It was part of the 24 appropriations from Congress that we got. In Ordinance 2443, the City Council authorized the agreement with Manikin Smith to conduct this study, and that was in June in 2024. And then I'm going to kind of hand it off to Kim.
Good evening, everyone. We're here tonight to, well, Manikin Smith is the prime on this, and we have a sub-consultant, Brown and Caldwell. We have Brian Rogney from Brown and Caldwell online with us tonight, and they are performing a lot of the modeling work that goes with this, and helping with the siting of the developments. So tonight, we are here to present the first part of our study. This is an initial round of potential locations for basins, some potential sizing. This is by no means a done deal. You know, this is the very beginning of our work. So I will turn it over to Brian from Brown and Caldwell, and he's going to give a presentation, and then at the end we will be happy to answer questions from council.
Okay, thanks, Kim. Thanks, everyone. Kim, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so good evening. Thanks for this opportunity. Like Kim and Megan had indicated, we just want to give you a status update on where we're at with this study. We know how important it is to the city, and this storage basin is going to go a long way towards reducing basement flooding and reducing flows ultimately to either the West 227th pump station or the Rocky River wastewater treatment plant. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. I'm sure you're going to have questions afterward. Probably best just to do it. I'll try and keep it to 20 minutes to a half hour, and hopefully have some good question and dialogue comes out of it. Okay, so I'll just provide a little background in addition to what Kim and Megan had already provided. We'll talk about the study objectives, which just sets the frame for the overall analysis. And then we'll just start going into some of the options that we're looking at in two separate service areas. You are, I'm sure, all aware that the sewer system is goes to two separate wastewater treatment plants, depending on where you are. North side goes to Rocky River wastewater treatment plant. South side goes to the West 227th pump station, which then discharges ultimately to the North Olmsted wastewater treatment plant. And then we'll talk about what the next steps are. Okay, so I probably don't need to tell you, of some of the issues and problems within the existing sewer system. A lot of the storm or the sanitary sewer system is often overwhelmed by what's called inflow and infiltration. And you can think of that as unwanted storm water that's getting into the sewers. And what happens is that during large storm events, that's just overwhelming the sewers, and that water really has nowhere to go because the sewers have limited capacity other than to back up into the system and ultimately into people's basements. So obviously that's one of the goals of the study, is to try and protect as many basements from flooding as we can through implementation of a storage basin. And then as another consideration is, we're hoping to do what we can to reduce peak flows to the Rocky River wastewater treatment plant, located in Rocky River, close to Lake Erie. And the issue there is that the treatment plant also is limited in capacity. And when flows exceed that, they can overflow and produce releases of untreated sewage to Lake Erie, which is a violation of the Clean Water Act. Okay, so what we're doing is basically trying to figure out where are feasible locations for the equalization, and we're going to focus on trying to get the most value that we can for the money spent. And so we're going to go through kind of we're going to kind of share with you the process, where we're looking at and how we're approaching the locations that we are. And you'll see that we're not just trying to find parks or locations where you can put in a storage basin, but rather focus more on the problem areas themselves. And that storage could be both above ground and below ground storage. Most likely it's going to be below ground storage because it's out of sight, out of mind. And so the community impacts are going to be far less when you're building below ground storage. And then we're also going to be looking at other co-benefits to the storage. So obviously performance in terms of basement flooding reduction is a big one, reduction in flows to the Rocky River treatment plant. But we're also going to prioritize these locations based on cost effectiveness. We're going to be looking at cost and whether or not it's affordable. And then we have a whole other host of non-monetary criteria that we can also use and score each one of these basins to ultimately provide the city with enough information to make an informed decision of where the storage basin is going to be located and what the benefits are going to be from that particular location. Mentioned earlier that we've got two systems. We've got the sewer service area that drains to the Rocky River wastewater treatment plant. That's shown in the sewers in red. So these are actually sewers that are currently in a hydraulic model that was developed by others. And that hydraulic model is just simply a way to simulate the performance of a sewer system under both dry weather and wet weather conditions. So when it rains hard, it's going to overwhelm that sewer system, and the model will help us determine what those impacts are, to what degree those backups would occur, and then we can use that to evaluate various proposed conditions or alternatives. So looking at storage, by putting in storage, what is the relative benefit using these hydraulic models, and it just helps us calculate those overall benefits and then ultimately prioritize locations for the storage. So we've got that for both the Rocky River and the West 227th basins. I will say in the Rocky River model case, not all of the sewers are explicitly modeled, only sewers that are 10 inches and greater. So you have a lot of smaller streets where the 8-inch sewers are not modeled, but that's okay, because if we're showing backups in the larger 10 inches lines, all of those 8-inch lines that are connected to those 10-inch lines will also be backing up and propagating upwards. So, we feel that we have sufficient detail in the models to really have a good understanding of the what the issues are in the sewer system during rain events, and then how we can use those to evaluate proposed storage alternatives. Okay, so I'm going to start on the north end in the Rocky River treatment plant service area. And so those red lines that you saw on the previous figure, you're basically looking at the same thing. They're yellow in this case. These are the modeled or simulated pipes. And we looked at 3 specific locations. We looked at a bunch of different options. Again, we are targeting not only where is there available space to put in storage, but maybe more importantly, where are those problem areas, and can we target those areas, again, to maximize the overall benefit from that storage? So the 3 locations that we're looking at is Bulkin Park, and I'll get into detail on each one of these. Bain Park, farther south, and then Alexander Road, which is just on the west end of the city boundary. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is really identify where are those problem areas. And this is, and we have 2 sources to help us identify where the problem areas are. We have the hydraulic model, and these are calibrated models that were developed, that were calibrated in the last 5 years with actual flow meter data. And then so the model is calibrated to simulate those specific rain events and match to those flows and those depths in the sewers. So there was a considerable calibration effort. So we do have confidence in the model so that when we run these larger storms, we have a pretty good feel of what the hydraulic conditions are, or what are the, what do the backups look like because of the insufficient capacity in the existing sewer system. And we can validate that also by using the the reported basement flooding database that the city has developed since 2007. So all of the parcels that you see that are colored, these are parcels or properties that have reported basement flooding in the past for various storms. So we can take a look at model results, which you see, you can see the sewer network in brown. This is right out of the model. The green dots represent just manhole locations, but the red dots represent where we're simulating water levels that come within 8 feet of the ground surface. And this is an indicator that we use in a lot of places, and it's a good indicator of when that water level gets up to within 8 feet of the ground surface, chances are you're going to have basement flooding or potential for basement flooding, because most basements are 8 feet below ground. So that's kind of our threshold, a way of looking and comparing model results versus the anecdotal basement flooding to make sure that, we have there's alignment there, that we have confidence in the model. And then from there, we can go and take a look at, okay, where are the problem areas and where could the storage be placed such that it would benefit or reduce that flooding potential. So that's kind of the approach that we're using. For every storage alternative that I look at, I'll start out with this map. We won't get into detail like I just did here, but just so you have that context and the understanding of how we're using these maps to identify problem areas and then focusing on those problem areas. So storage in Bolton Park is actually, it's really an ideal location. It's publicly available land, so there's no additional land costs. Plus, parks are a great location for storage tanks. Again, we're looking primarily at storage tanks that would be buried. And so after construction and the park is restored, you won't even know that there's a storage basin there. And you can put in whatever park amenities that you want on top. So you could put, just continue to have the ball field on top. You could put tennis courts, skate parks, whatever. But in this particular case, what we're doing is we're trying to divert that excess wet weather flow that these storms generate in the sewers, divert that excess wet weather flow to storage where we temporarily store it. And then after the storm is over and the storm recedes and the water is able to drain to the treatment plant for treatment, only then would we pump out of the storage basin when there's available downstream capacity. And again, this would go a long way towards alleviating, those backups that you would get, those really high water levels in the sewers that can get into basements. So we, in this particular example, by doing so, for the 5-year design storm, so this is on average, it would occur once every roughly 5 years. That's how large the storm would be. So it'd be a 1 in 5 year storm is the way to look at it. Bolton Park storage, in order to get down to a level where we would be happy with the flood protection that it provided, we need about 1.1 million gallons of storage. So even a bigger storm, we can run that as well in the model, and we determined that that would require 1.3 million gallons of storage in this particular case. Now, the nice thing about these models is they provide visual tools to demonstrate what is the overall benefit from that storage location. So we'll see a lot of profiles here. I'm not going to go into detailed explanation on each profile other than this first one, just to show you what we're looking at. But the profile is just a cross-section view through the ground, through the sewer. And in this case, we're looking at the profile that starts at the upstream end at Linden Road, which is basically the lower right-hand corner. You see that blue highlighted sewer located on the map? That's the same area where you're looking at the profile to the left. So we could run the model then with both existing conditions and then with the storage to look at what the relative benefit in terms of reduced water levels and reduced basement flooding. So in this particular case, if we put in storage at Bolton Park near the upstream end, and again, this would be about 1.1 million gallons of storage, we're diverting that excess wet weather flow and that thereby reducing flows downstream. We can reduce this water level, particularly in the upstream area, by more than 10 feet, which is pretty substantial. So this is just a good way to visualize the overall benefit of that storage. And another thing we're looking at too is, can we get any peak flow reduction by diverting flow to the storage basin all the way at the treatment plant? And again, I mentioned earlier that, during these large events, the treatment plant can also become overwhelmed and produce overflows to Lake Erie. So we're also looking at that as a metric for evaluating each one of these locations. So in this particular case, the peak flows at the wastewater treatment plant during this 5-year design storm would go from 155 million gallons per day down to 147. And I know that doesn't seem like a lot as a percentage-wise, but it's actually pretty substantial and would provide quite a bit of relief at the treatment plant itself. So this is just another metric that we're using. Just another profile of the same thing, just a different area close to Bolton Park storage. In this case, it's just going down a different sewer profile across the Center Ridge Road all the way down to Hilliard at the downstream end. And you can see the relative benefit then of the storage on the water levels in that sewer system highlighted in blue. Okay, the next one was farther south of Vulcan Road, Vulcan Park. And this is an area just south of Bade Park on West 210th Street. And you can see here that according to the basement flooding reporting, that this area experienced quite a bit of basement flooding, over the past, I don't know how many years, but quite a few reports. This matches up well with our simulated results where we're showing the red dots. And again, those are areas where there's a potential for basement flooding based on our model results. So focusing in on this area to provide storage is, we need to figure out, is there a suitable location close by where we could actually build a tank? When we started this analysis, we actually started looking at the parking lot up in the park farther to the north on West 210th. The problem with that is we'd have to divert flow from West 210th, and we'd have to divert it across this stream or this creek here. And we'd likely have to siphon it underneath the creek, which can pose challenges from a constructability standpoint and an O&M or an operation and maintenance standpoint. So after talking to the city, they had asked, hey, is there a way to put it up further, farther south in the park, of an area of the park that's relatively unused? And so we looked at that and said, hey, this actually would be a suitable location. But what we need to do is we need to also put in some diversion sewers from these lines that are experiencing flooding, or what we call surcharging, where that there's high levels, water levels get up really high in the sewer system. Divert that to storage on Eaton Road and on West 213th from the existing sewer system. In this case, the Bain Park storage shown down in this area would be equivalent of about 500,000 gallons of storage. So smaller than the Vulcan Park. And you can see what the results would look like using those same types of profiles. So again, this is a profile down West 210th, starting from Mastic Road, going all the way down to the northern edge of the city boundary, just north of Vulcan Park. And you can see, particularly in the area that had reported, basement flooding in the past, that would be this upstream area here. And you can see what a substantial reduction would be with the implementation of the storage in this particular location, and also its benefit on reduced water levels downstream. Looking at another profile along South Park Drive with that same basin in the same location would also provide quite a bit of relief, going from the red line, which is the existing condition, likely producing quite a few basement backups during these large events, and then reducing that all the way down to the blue line. So quite a bit of benefit there. The downside is that this is so far upstream from the Rocky River treatment plant that you really get very little benefit in terms of peak flow reduction, just because of how far it is located from the Rocky River treatment plant. So it provides a lot of flood protection locally, but does not provide as much benefit in terms of peak flow reduction at the treatment plant. Okay, the third area in the Rocky River service area that we looked at was the Alexander Road area. Again, you can see a pretty big cluster of reported basement flooding over the last 15 or so years. And the model results confirm that same thing, that this is a problem area, that you have all of this excess inflow and infiltration getting into the sewer system, overwhelming it and producing these basement backups. The first thing we did is look for suitable locations in this area, and there just isn't a lot of available land. Most of this is fully developed, pretty small parcels. There was one area on the eastern side of the map that you're seeing here And we asked whether or not storage underneath the elementary school parking lot, how that would go over. And I know this through experience, it's always a tough sell to put in a wastewater storage tank in a school. So the city agreed. So, when we discussed this further, we said, hey, maybe there's another viable option. Instead of a storage tank, maybe we can divert excess wet weather flow from the existing sewer system into a large oversized pipe that would just fit in the right of way of the street, where we could obtain that same required storage volume that a tank would provide. So in this particular case, this length of pipe that you see here in blue, if this were a 72-inch pipe to store, again, just to store that excess flow until the peak of the storm is over, and then you could drain that back into the existing storm or into the existing system, that would be about 500,000 gallons of storage. So using the model again, we can look at what is that, in terms of benefit over existing conditions. So the red line represents that baseline condition during the 5-year design storm, and this is, likely, what you would see during these really high intensity, short duration events that overwhelm the sewer system, creating these basement backups. And then what the benefit of that pipe storage is to reduce those water levels and ultimately to reduce basement flooding in the area. So we looked at both a 60-inch pipe for storage and a 72-inch pipe. 72-inch pipe would have more storage than a 60-inch. And this option would also provide a pretty considerable peak flow reduction at the Rocky River treatment plant. So this could be a viable option, a little different than a tank, but certainly a viable option towards reducing both peak flows at the plant and basement flooding. And then this is just another profile of the same area. But a lot of the area that was experienced basement flooding are these upstream reaches, both on West 227th and West 229th. Okay. So those are the three the viable options that we've looked at so far. We will probably look at one more that we've been looking at, but we just haven't gone through the analysis yet. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about the West 227th pump station service area. Again, this flow discharges to the North Olmsted wastewater treatment plant, but this area has also experienced quite a bit of basement flooding. So, you can see, especially in the northwest quadrant, close to the pump station. A few years ago, another consultant did a basin study of the West 227th pump station area and looked at various options to reduce these water levels and the potential for basement flooding. They looked at a couple different storage locations, which I'll show you here, which are shown in red. But they also found that the existing pumps in the pump station had issues. The impellers were very warm, and there was the potential for sedimentation and blockages. And when that happens, you get a much reduced capacity out of the pump station than it was originally designed for. So what they had recommended is just replacing those pumps with the same capacity as what they were originally designed for. And I believe those pump station upgrades are currently in design, and those are planned to be implemented. And they can actually have a pretty profound effect on the overall flooding within this area. So as you can see here, the red line up on top is the existing pumps with one pump running during that 5-year design storm. And if the proposed pumps are put in with one pump running, you can see what that benefit is. So you're pumping at that much higher of a rate. You're getting water through the system, ultimately to the treatment plant that much faster, and as a result, you're actually able to dramatically reduce the level near the pump station. However, there is an area just south of I-480 that is not as influenced by the insufficient capacity of that pump station. And that is the area, this whole line coming down 224th. So one of the areas that we did look at is potential storage in the property that's just adjacent to I-480, which actually shows a lot of promise. I know that, the city had put in a request for purchase of this property for various reasons. You may want to revisit this in the near future if, this basin comes out as being very viable and cost effective. So what we're seeing here using the modeling is that if we were to divert to that storage basin adjacent to the freeway, you could substantially reduce the peak water levels in this area, even with the proposed pumps in. So what this is showing is that this area, the proposed pumps, has a lot of local benefit close to the pump station, but as you get farther away, that benefit diminishes. So, if this area is truly behaving like the model is suggesting, this is a very viable place for storage in terms of peak flow reduction, both to the pump station and then in terms of water level reduction and basement flooding mitigation. Okay, so just about done here. So just these are our preliminary findings. This is really kind of our overall approach. We are taking it to the next step because, let's face it, cost does matter. And so we want to look at cost and cost effectiveness specifically. So we're doing two things. We're trying to figure out what is the appropriate design storm to design our storage basin to. The bigger the design storm, the bigger the storage is going to have to be, the more expensive it's going to be. But there's an opportunity to right-size this basin and figure out what is that design level of service or that design storm that we can use that provides the most benefit for ultimately the lowest cost. And so based on these findings of all these different types of storms that we're running, we're finding that the short duration, high intensity storms are producing, the highest levels and the greatest potential for basement flooding. And that's demonstrated by the yellow line here, which is the 10-year 1-hour storm, and then the red line, which is the 5-year 1-hour storm. So we're really going to be moving forward with the 5-year and the 10-year design storms for our analysis. And then the one thing that we're working on too, in terms of trying to estimate the benefit in terms of cost savings or the damages potentially reduced by eliminating basement flooding, and then comparing that against the cost of the actual storage basin. So because we have the hydraulic model and we have those profiles that we had showed you, we can also use the model to identify those parcels that when you put in a storage basin would be eliminated from basement flooding, where they would be, where we're simulating under existing conditions, these would be impacted. So the green line or the green parcels would represent the basement backups that could be prevented with this storage basin for the 5-year design storm. And then if we expanded that to the 10-year design storm, then it would be the green parcels plus the red parcels. Now, what we're planning to do is we'll make some assumptions in terms of, during these, under existing conditions, when these design storms hit and there is basement flooding, what is the damage per household when basement flooding occurs? For example, it could be $5,000 of just materials and cleanup costs that would be incurred by the homeowner during a large event such as this. Now, if you applied that to all the parcels, you would have a cost or basically a benefit in terms of backups prevented or, dollars, the costs that would be eliminated from those basement backups. And we could compare that against the life cycle costs of the storage basin. And ultimately what we're doing is, trying to obtain a benefit and a cost. And then if you have that in terms of dollars, then you can develop a benefit cost ratio, and anything greater than 1 would demonstrate that you have a greater benefit than cost. And we can also use those benefit cost ratios as a metric for comparing one basin versus the other, which will give us an indication of which basins that we're evaluating have the greatest value for the dollar spent, or basically in simple terms, that give you the greatest bang for the buck. So that's what we're currently working on. We're also, working on other ways to identify what those other potential benefits would be through implementation of storage in terms of the non-monetary considerations such as community impact and benefit, constructability issues, other environmental concerns, things like that. So anyway, that's where we're at. We're hoping to have the overall analysis done by the end of July, and I think, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, but the report completed by the end of August.
Yes.
So I'm sure that we'll hopefully have an opportunity to present our findings to you again.
All right, thanks, Brian. I did want to add one thing. I know we were showing on the slides that we were taking into consideration the effects at the Rocky River wastewater treatment plant. And you may wonder why is it important there? The costs of what it costs the city of Fairview Park to pay for their portion of the treatment at the plant is based on the I&I analysis. So when we can reduce Fairview's flows there, we can reduce our costs for the treatment plant. So that's why it's important to also look at the flows that are going there.
Great point.
Yeah. So did anyone have questions they want to ask?
I do. Okay, thank you for all that information. That was very interesting and helpful to see the profiles of the
Are you able to hear her okay, Brian?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, the effects of the water levels in the sewers. So just to be clear, these tanks are meant to hold stormwater. And the stormwater is the issue because our sanitary lines allow so much I&I, and it's backing up into residents' basement, and it's pushing greater volumes downstream to the water treatment. Is that a good summary?
Well, it's stormwater mixed with sanitary water. So it's not totally stormwater, but it's mixing with the sewage, and that's why you can't just let it go out to the creek or whatever, because it's mixing, so it has to be treated. But yes, it's basically because of stormwater that's getting into the sanitary system from a variety of sources, mainline pipes, private side laterals, cross connections, downspouts tied into the sanitary system, just a lot of deficiencies that could happen in the system. Plus, the sizing of these sewers were done years and years and years ago, and we're getting bigger storms. So we're seeing more stormwater coming down with the storms. Brian, anything else to add on that?
No, I'd say that's a good summary. The one thing I would add is that, one of the ways to also address the problem is try to reduce the amount of inflow and infiltration getting into the sewer system. But that can be a difficult challenge in and of itself because there's a lot of private property work, a lot of community impact, and to reduce the equivalent of flow that a storage tank could manage could take 20, 30 years. So it's certainly a prolonged schedule in order to be able to implement that, provided you could identify and even find where those sources of I&I are getting into the system. So that's why a storage tank is a very viable and cost-effective option for the city of Fairview.
Okay. So my other questions kind of tie into that. So you mentioned 5-year storms, 10-year storms. Is that using historical data, or is that using future modeling based on climate change models?
Great question. So that is currently using historical data, right? And so the 5-year design storm and is developed with 50, 60, 70 years sometimes of historical rainfall data. But as Kim mentioned, things are getting worse, right? Climate change is increasing the magnitude and frequency of our storms. And so we are not specifically adjusting the rainfall currently to account for climate change, although that's something we could look at. But sometimes we do it indirectly by saying, okay, the 5-year design storm now in 25 years probably be equivalent to a 10-year design storm. So maybe we need to just increase our level of service to account for impacts of climate change. So that's one of the things that we'll also be addressing in the report.
That was one of my concerns, is that the capacity wouldn't be meeting the future need, that we'd outgrow
Right,
the system. But like you said, if we also address like the sleeving program and the money that we're putting towards sewer repairs, that will help mitigate some of this, right?
Yes. Yeah, any I&I that we remove from the system will help offset any future increases in rainfall, and it will just make the system better.
Okay.
Yeah, and we always encourage communities to continue with their I&I reduction efforts through, sewer lining, other forms of rehab, to only increase the level of service in the future. But, given the extent of the problems within the city now, the storage tank will go a long way towards mitigating a lot of the issues, in the short term, and then long term, more I&I reduction efforts could be implemented to continually chip away to increase the overall level of service to account for things like climate change.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then it sounds kind of like you dig a big hole, you put this tank in, you cover it up, you can kind of forget about it. What's the lifespan of these things?
Minimum 50 years, likely up to 100.
Okay, but they have some kind of shut off, the water and waste gets in there. It doesn't get released until we control the flow. We hear from the water treatment or something and they say, let it rip.
Correct. That can be handled a couple different ways. I don't know, Kim, do you want to address that, or? I certainly can.
You can, yeah, please do.
Oh, okay. So yes, so what most storage basins look like is that we would have what we call gravity in, pump out. So basically, the excess wet weather flow, when it gets up to a certain level, we divert flow through just a regular gravity pipe to the storage basin, where then it would fill up to whatever the design storm volume that you're designing to, and then after the storm is over, that would get pumped out back to the sanitary sewer system, which would get treated at the treatment plant. Now, all of this can be automated, or it can be done manually. So you could build in controls such that it would only pump into the sewer system long after the storm is gone, and you can use that by just using, say, downstream sensors in the sewer somewhere or at the treatment plant to inform the basin when to pump that out. Or it can be done manually, either or. We see both implemented quite a bit.
Okay. And since this is a mixture of rain and sanitary water that has gotten mixed with it, all of this water is going to go to the treatment plant then, all this rainwater,
Correct.
Everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
And will get treated. Okay, and so what kind of maintenance, and the pump I would imagine is different. You can't just buy one and it's good for 50 to 100 years. What are our, how often will we have to replace these? What kind of annual maintenance will it require? Will it require annual maintenance?
Oh, absolutely, yes. And so, when you tend to get, and I'll just, be completely honest, when you have wastewater, you're going to have solids that settle out when it gets stored. Now, what we often recommend is you can put in an automated flushing system. So, especially if odor is an issue. So, when you have wastewater sitting for a while, it can go septic, and it can start generating odors. The good news is that we don't see that very often in systems like this because you have so much I&I that you don't get a lot of just material sediment buildup that would create a septic or an odorous condition over time. But what we do recommend is that you could build in an automated flushing system, and they call them tipping bucket flushers, that just after the event, after the basin is used, it just goes through an automated procedure where it fills up a tipping bucket. And if you've ever been to a water park and you see these big buckets fill up, and when they get almost full, they tip down and they splash, on top of kids' heads. They love it. They work the same way. When they fill up, they tip, and then it sends a wave of water across. Think of it as a bowling alley lane. So the basin would be divided up into these lanes, and it generates enough flushing velocity to clean all of the sediment, everything, all the rags, whatever it may be, to the bottom of the basin, which then gets pumped out and to the treatment plant. So that can go a long way towards significantly reducing odors and significantly reduce manual maintenance that would otherwise be required. But it does come with a cost. So those are the trade-offs that we would want to look at moving forward.
Okay. Are the other cities that use the Rocky River treatment plant also installing these tanks, or have they already put them in? I want to do our part too, not to overwhelm the system, and of course we benefit from not having the flooding, but are other cities also kind of taking a load off?
I think Bay Village has worked on some EQ basins. They may have one actually installed already. In Westlake also. Rocky River doesn't have any EQ basins at this moment, but they have a significant reduction program where they're replacing sewers and private I&I. They're going about it in a slightly different way. But North Olmsted just put in a very large EQ basin at the Stearns 480 interchange area there.
Okay.
So they're doing their part for the North Olmsted treatment plant. So it's people are doing it around here. It's just a matter of time. They're big and they take a little time to get designed, but eventually it'll probably happen in all the cities for the Rocky River treatment plant.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have at the moment. Council, does anybody else have questions? I see Sarah.
If I may.
Yes, Councilwoman Waring.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for being here this evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Fantastic. So I represent Ward 4, and Ward 4 has been very well highlighted in your presentation this evening.
That's 227 and 226.
Yeah, 227,
Yep,
229, 226. The Alexander pipe would go right through my ward. So I have some questions for you to get a better understanding. The first question is, what does the recommendation ultimately look like that you're going to prepare between now and August, based on what you've already shown us? So you've shown us a couple of locations. Are we going to ultimately see a recommendation for here is the tank, here is a recommendation for 2 tanks, or here is what we have found, and now you figure out what the recommendation is? What can we expect in that report?
Good question. So what we like to do is, the method that we're going through, and especially in terms, I just touched upon this, but, looking at cost benefits and developing metrics for which we can compare alternatives, we take those rankings then and we prioritize them. And, with city input, and we don't necessarily make one strong recommendation. This is the one. The reality is that you're probably not, the city of Fairview Park, in order to solve all of your basement flooding issues, it's going to take more than one tank, right? And so what we want to do is prioritize those based on cost effectiveness and then other criteria that we'll work with the city to develop. And we'll come up with a scoring and a ranking and a prioritization based on that ranking. So I think that's what you can expect. I would expect, though, for there to be some stakeholder engagement maybe discussions with you to better understand, what some of the needs are, so we can also incorporate that into some of the other criteria that we use to evaluate storage basins. So I would say what our plan is to have a prioritized or a list of locations prioritized by the scoring system that we come up with.
Okay, thank you. This question may be for Kim. So I know you had talked about if the water goes to the wastewater treatment plant, the INI, we get a benefit because we pay for it when it gets there. But I'm not making the connection, so I'm hoping you can help me, between if we put in the tank, then we don't pay for the INI, because ultimately it's going to make it to Rocky River anyway to be treated. It's just delayed by an hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, God forbid, 12 hours, right? Like, how does that lead to cost reduction?
Okay, so the flow and strength study that's done every 4 years by the treatment plant calculates the amount of flow that you have coming to the plant, but it takes into account how much you have coming at like peak times. And because we're going to be able to lower our peak, it should lower our percentage of flow that's coming in at those times.
Okay, so it's kind of like prior or prorated billing, or however you would say it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's kind of
if
like,
you do
you
it
know, you
during
have a
these
big
hours,
bell
it's this
curve,
amount.
but you're cutting a little bit off the top.
The old
kind of
call
thing.
after 9, we can get a reduced price if we
Yeah.
send it at a different time. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you
Sure.
for helping me connect that. Another question I have is the auto flushing options, Brian, that you had talked about for the tanks. I know that the tanks are an animal, but we are also recommending potentially a pipe along Alexander. And like I said, this would go directly through my ward.
Correct.
Does that pipe have auto flushing capabilities, or because it's a consistent pipe that things are going through, it would just auto flush itself? What does that look like?
Another good question. So typically the oversized pipe would not have a flushing system. So it could require more maintenance to get rid of any sediment buildup in it. However, we normally would have a slope on that pipe, like all sewers do. And so, we would also take a look at what are the flushing velocities when we're diverting flow. Is that flushing velocity in that pipe going to be sufficient to keep that sediment moving downstream? So we'll look at that. We can, oftentimes we'll put in a different material, a much smoother material that would promote, a higher flow rate or higher flow velocities, especially during low flows. And that would be a product called Hovas, which is a fiberglass pipe, very smooth walled. So there are things that we can do, but normally you wouldn't have an automated flushing system, though, in a oversized pipe. So that could be one of the downsides. But, to be honest with you, there's so much I&I in the system. The more I&I you have, the less sediment you tend to have in your combined flow with I&I. And so I don't anticipate sedimentation being a huge issue in Fairview Park just because of the amount of I&I that's getting into the system, which is relatively clean water compared to the wastewater, the dry weather flow.
Okay. Yeah, I know we've had a lot of success jetting our sewers. So I have to believe that there's sediment accumulating in places that jetting has made such a difference for us. And so that is a concern of mine, but I appreciate you giving that perspective.
And jetting, that's how you would clean out the oversized pipe as well, just like you do with your other sewers, is jetting.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then I think the last question that I have, at least so far, I always reserve the right for more. But the last question I have is, some of the models that you were showing us were specifically around the Woodstock, Sanford, Belvedere area, where we have some ongoing work happening now. Is there a chance those models are outdated based on the work that we have going on, where we could project, yes, this particular storage basin would work, and then we find out that we've already fixed the problem and perhaps another location would have worked? Have you taken into account that work?
So we've talked to Kim and Brian about this, and Kim, I think we still need to have on our next meeting, figure out, are there things that we need to look at, as far as, near and planned improvements that we should be accounting for in the model? But it's a good question. Kim, you have anything more you want to add to that?
Yeah, so the model, when it was done for the wastewater treatment plant, that's the base model that we're using for that area. It did include the Stanford and Woodstock improvements in that model. So we just need to confirm that what's in there is the actual sizes that we designed and put in there, but it should be pretty close. It does not include any like potential improvements on Belvedere, but I don't think that those two projects are gonna eliminate the need for a 1 million gallon tank potentially in this area. But we will make sure that, everything we'll confirm that everything's in the model.
Okay. And the model that we're using, is that the one that was done, I think it was by R2O? Is that?
Yeah, both of these models were done by R2O. The Rocky River wastewater treatment plant model was R2O, but that was a contract with the treatment plant. And R2O did the West 227th pump station model under contract with the city of Fairview Park.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I reserve the right, but I think I'm finished. Thank you, Kim.
Yes, Councilman Minnick.
Thank you. Brian, what's the depth of this equalization facility?
So, for instance, the one at Bolkin Park as an example, it's really dependent upon the depth of the sewers. So in this particular area, the depth of the sewer is already about 20 feet. So because we're diverting excess flow from the sewer, the basin would likely have to be 30 feet below the surface, which is not anything extreme. We have basins, we've designed basins much deeper than that. But just to give you a perspective, you probably want to have a maximum of 10 feet of water in, as a maximum in the storage tank, but you still have to go down quite a ways, in order to make the system work to be able to divert flow to it.
Okay, I'm a little
Does that answer
concerned.
your question?
Yes, I'm concerned about Boken Park. There's a soccer field at present time there. And if you're going to go down 30 feet, could that soccer field be used as a equalization tank?
Yeah, so the one thing that we didn't look at is site-specific location within Bolkin Park. But that would be, part of the next steps is to try and minimize impacts and, especially minimize impacts to the park itself.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, if we excavate, put the tank in, we would put the dirt back on top of it,
Yeah.
and then reestablish the soccer field above it. So we may disturb it during construction, but it would be recreated, when the construction was done and usable as is today or however the city desired.
Thank you, Brian and Kim. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Councilman Lang?
Yeah, so that actually, the question from Mr. Minnick was a good one. So I'm trying to envision the size of a equalization tank sufficient for this size proposal. What are we looking at, like surface area wise, if it were, say, to go under a soccer field for the size that we would be looking at Bolkin Park? What size equalization tank, roughly, what are some dimensions that you could share, just so I can envision in my head?
Sure. So think of the footprint of a basketball court. So it would be roughly, that size. Could be bigger, could be smaller, depending on how deep it is, right? So if you make it deeper, then you can make the area less. But I would just say, as a general rule of thumb for the sizes that we're looking at, think about, basically your standard basketball court.
Okay, thank you. And then
Yep.
with the current infrastructure that we have and putting in an equalization tank and the projects that we have going on, and this might be a question that you can answer, Kim, what additional infrastructure requirements are we looking at long-term down the road that we would need to be prepared for in order to accommodate this size and scope of a project?
I think that if we are putting in this equalization tank, at the same time we do that, we're going to be putting in any infrastructure that's needed to drain the water to that, and that's going to be part of the cost of the basin. So beyond building these basins and getting the water there and then maintaining any pumps and maintenance of the system, I can't think of any additional costs that would be required specifically for that. Now, there may be other improvements that are needed in the city in the future, replacement of pipes because of age and condition. But Brian, is anything to add on that?
That's absolutely right. And so the closer the tank is to the sewer system that you're pulling flow off of, the additional costs are pretty minimal. But like Kim said, we would factor in those costs into the overall cost of the tank. So it's usually you would have to tie into the existing sewers or a manhole, and you probably have to put in a different or a new diversion structure. So think of it as just an oversized manhole to divert flow to the storage tank. And then you would have to also provide a discharge line, which is a pumped line. So say a 4-inch force main line connecting back to the local sewer where you pump after the event, after the storm is over. So other than that, the infrastructure requirements are pretty minimal outside of the tank footprint itself.
Thank you. Are there any type of property right easements, right-of-way issues that you envision with any of the sites that are currently being proposed?
Currently, okay, go ahead, Brian.
Go ahead, Kim. No, go ahead.
So currently, all of the sites that we're proposing are publicly owned or public street right-of-way. So I wouldn't anticipate any issues with those, except for the Mastic Road 480 site. I mean, we don't own that. So, it would be acquisition or easements or whatever, maybe if that was the site. But that would be any private property site if it was, if we were choosing to try to find a private property site.
Okay. And then lastly, these are predominantly cast construction, like concrete type facilities, or are these a plastic poly type storage solution? What is the construction material for the equalization tanks themselves for something this size?
So for something this size, you would typically use cast in place concrete. So they would be a concrete basin. Some communities for smaller basins are using larger diameter steel reinforced polyethylene pipes for storage. The key though is that you have to weld the joints together, and so they tend to be a leakier system, and they don't tend to last as long. They can be cheaper, but I would say just for now, I would assume that anywhere between 500,000 gallon and 1 million gallon storage basin would be reinforced concrete.
Okay, I think that's it for now.
Okay. Any other questions?
If I may,
Yes, Councilwoman.
I always reserve the right. Two things. And this is getting more into the implementation. So I do understand that we are not yet at a point where we have a recommendation or we know what we're going to do. So I guess I'm looking for crystal ball, really large ballpark ideas. But, what would an estimated cost for a project like this be for going after full design and then full construction?
So storage basins aren't cheap. The going rate is anywhere between $5 and $7 a gallon. So for instance, if you have a 500,000 gallon storage basin, you're probably looking at a minimum of $2.5 million for the storage tank.
Okay. And I do want to put that little asterisk that is the average, the going rate. That is not a rate that we are discussing. That is not a number we're throwing out as a city. I just wanted some perspective. So thank you
Yep.
for that.
You bet.
And then same thing, crystal ball, asterisk, all of those things in place. What is a typical timeline for construction? Is this something that gets done in 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years?
No, it would typically, depending on the complexity and the size, but I would say most storage basin could be constructed between 12 months and 18 months.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brian.
Okay. So next up is we will hear back from you after the August report.
Yeah, next steps would be probably in September, unless we come up with, if there's anything that happens between now and then that would require council input, we would come back. But yeah, I would expect in about September.
Okay, great. Thank you again for the excellent information and being so thorough with all the questions and everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Brian, for joining us online.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
You too, thanks.
Well then, since we're going to probably be talking about this again after we come back from recess, I will move that we keep the update on the equalization tank as an issue in the committee.
So moved.
Second.
Councilman Lang,
Yes.
Councilman Minnick,
Yes.
Councilwoman Greenfield. Oh, I'm sorry, she's absent. Council President King
Yes.
and Councilwoman Waring.
Yes.
Councilman Rayleigh?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. And this meeting of the Environment, Public Works, Planning, Zoning, and Development Committee is adjourned at 8:03.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Megan and Kim, for putting that together.
Yeah, I do have the PowerPoint that I'll send to Liz, and she can send it.
Excellent, thank you. Next up are Local Government and Community Services, Councilwoman Waring.
Thank you, Council President. Local Government and Community Services will begin at 8:03 p.m. This evening, we are discussing two ordinances. Ordinance 2641, amending Fairview Park Codified Ordinances, Section 301.04, bicycle, motorized bicycle, moped, electric bicycle, and Ordinance 2642, amending Fairview Park Codified Ordinances, Chapter 373, bicycles and motorcycles. At this time, I think it would make sense for us to discuss these as a pair because they do go together. So if there are any objections to that, I'd be open to hearing that. And I think where I'd like to start, if I can, is first of all, thank the administration. I know last week we threw you guys kind of a bone or what did we throw? Curveball. Thank you, ma'am. We threw you a bit of a curveball when we looked at this and said, hey, we'd like to have further discussion. So thank you for the opportunity for us as a council to come together because it is only in this chambers where we can all discuss these things together. Secondly, I think what I'd like to do is turn it over to the administration. I believe we have Sergeant McIntyre, right? Sergeant or Lieutenant? I forget. Okay. So we have him this evening here to discuss with us kind of what we are looking at in terms of like what are e-bikes and what are the changes we want to make and what are the problems that we're trying to solve. And then I would also ask Director Dever if you could, and maybe you're going to do this together, I would just like input from you as well as to what these things are from a legal perspective. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Matt. Thank you.
Again, my name is Matt McIntyre. I'm a sergeant at the police department. I'm also in charge of our bike unit. And I don't think it'll be a surprise to anyone to know that for the last few years we have seen a pretty significant increase in the use of e-bikes, scooters, and similar devices in the community. In particular, over the last couple of months since the weather's gotten warmer, we've been responding to more calls for service and accidents involving these devices as well. And so our number one priority in the community is safety, and I think that the amendments to the ordinances that are being proposed tonight do a pretty good job at modernizing the current language, which was written before these devices really existed in the community, and will help the department stay proactive in our approach to safety regarding these devices as we approach or as we continue on into summer. There are different classifications for the e-bikes. There's class 1, 2, and 3. Basically, classes 1 and 2 can go about 20 miles an hour. Class 3 goes 28 miles an hour. Class 1 is pedal assist only, so the motor is engaged only when the pedals are engaged. Class 2 has a throttle. Usually it's kind of a thumb throttle. And then class 3 again is pedal assist only, but it goes a little bit faster. What we've been seeing a lot is juveniles, especially using the devices on sidewalks. Obviously, that poses some safety concerns within the community. So again, we don't really want to discourage the use of devices in totality. We just want to encourage the safe use of them as they continue to be more and more prevalent in the community. There's a lot of information regarding these devices. It gets pretty thick as far as the rules and regulations apply to each of them. That's kind of the meat and potatoes of it. But what I'd like to do instead is just offer, if you guys have any questions, closer?
Closer, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So if you guys have any questions, I would like to address those with you guys now, and then we can kind of go from there.
I think I could start.
Sure.
Can you tell us about some of the calls and some of the problems that we have been seeing in the community so that we can get a better understanding of that problem that we're trying to solve? I know you mentioned that there is an increased usage. I think we've all been able to visually see that. And that you've said that there are more calls for service. Is this like nuisance calls? Is it accidents? Are people getting hurt? What? Can you give us a couple examples?
So we do get, we have been getting more nuisance calls, and that's kind of been progressive. When the weather kind of broke this year back in the spring, we really started to see, we got kind of an influx of accidents involving e-scooters and bikes pretty much right away. Some of them were minor property damage or minor injury. We had one pretty serious injury involving an e-scooter back in April or May. So it's been a little bit of a mix, but the thing that was most striking was the increase in the number of accidents that we saw as soon as they started kind of getting out into the nicer weather. And so we want to be proactive with that as we continue on in the summer, and we kind of expect to see more use of them as we continue on through the year, through the season.
Okay. And I know we're talking a lot about juveniles. Is this a problem that we're seeing only with juveniles, or are we seeing this problem with adults as well?
It's not exclusive to juveniles. I would say it's majority juveniles, but it's certainly not exclusive to them.
Council, does anyone have any questions for Sergeant McIntyre? Okay. So what I'd like to do, if you could, is stand by, because I think we'll get more questions. I always reserve that right. But could I have you, Law Director Dever, just kind of outline the changes that are being recommended and why those changes are being made?
Sure. So I'm sure that you're all aware that House Bill 948, which is pending in the Ohio legislature, which is an attempt to get a hold of this growing proliferation of e-bikes, mostly involving children. There are a couple of studies that have been released this year, one from the Dayton the Dayton Children's Hospital, that calculated out the amount of accidents they had of injury, which required services. In 2024, it was 18. 2025, it was 135. And as of May 28th of this year, it was 109 involving children that have been treated as a result of e-bike accidents. There's also a study from the NYU Langone Medical Center that has identified that the extensive amount of injury that is caused by these e-bike accidents to pedestrians is at the level that are significantly related to or similar to what they're seeing in low-speed automobile accidents, with a number of significant head injuries, broken bones, things of that nature. So we have the federal government that's taking a look at this right now, as well as the state legislature, to do a couple of things. First of all, to mount a education process to put in place so that people understand what the rules are for using e-bikes, and then safety courses, as well as there's some talk to amend the vehicular homicide statutes to include, right now e-bikes are not designated to be a vehicle under the Title 29 of the revised code. What they're going to do is they're going to carve out and create a category that would reckless use of an e-bike that resulted in a fatality would fit under the vehicular homicide statute. But that hasn't come to pass yet, and that's the reason why we're getting involved in it to try to stay ahead of it because of the proliferation of the bikes. So the changes essentially are, one, that any operation of an e-bike on a sidewalk can only be in the pedal power, that children under 18, whether they're using a bike or using a skateboard or any kind of electronic device except for, say, the Barbie Jeep, that's still a toy, those would require to wear helmets for those. And then there are certain responsibilities that are put in place as to when e-bikes can be used in designated areas, and I've provided you a sheet that goes down through all of the changes. This law that we have on the books, the ordinances that we have on the books, this is going to take a deep dive and go through the entire section involving bicycles and e-bikes, and it's a plan to do that once the state and federal laws are put in place. Hopefully that'll be done by the end of the year. So I'd be happy to address any of the questions you have as to the specific sections of the ordinance. The first change is to actually identify and define what is an e-bike and the different classes, Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and also that e-bikes or electronic or motorized vehicles do not include wheelchairs or any of those type of devices. This goes to the scooters, the what is the name of the one wheel thing that we see right now?
One wheel.
The one wheel, okay. So it seems like any time there's a new device out there that would fit into this category.
So may I ask, and this is just trying to get an understanding of it, if there are juveniles who are using these devices, e-bike, right?
Yeah.
We're applying bicycle rules. We're asking them to follow traffic signals and devices.
Right.
We are putting them on the street if they're using it as a motorized vehicle, right?
Yes.
But we are basically saying that there is no minimum age for operating some of these.
There's you cannot operate a Class 3 bike, anyone under the age of 16.
Is that current or is that proposed?
That's the current law, I believe,
That's current
state
under
law.
ORC.
Thank you. Okay, so let's say you take a 10-year-old who has been provided one of these by their parents, and we're now going to ask them to ride in the street because I don't necessarily agree they belong on a sidewalk, right? But we're taking these children off of what is previously considered a safer area, putting them in with actual auto vehicles where, you know, that 10-year-old, 11-year-old, they know to stop at a red light, but do they know to stop at a red light, right? Do we foresee that this potentially could create other safety concerns? Have other places done it and we've noticed that it's been fine?
Well, we're trying to stay in compliance with what is existing state law right now, as well as what has been passed by other municipalities. I think Bay Village has recently passed something similar to what we're proposing. Parma, I believe Twinsburg as well. There are not a lot of cities that have passed this, but using the state ordinance as a model, if there's a child who's 12, 13, 14 years old, they can use the e-bike, but they have to use it in a pedal power on the sidewalk. So the designated bike lanes are where it is permissible to have the engaged e-bike, whether it's the 1, the 2, or the 3. So I get your questions as what are you going to do with these kids who all have these bikes? And that's the dilemma as to where you operate the bike. On a quiet residential street as opposed to on Lorraine Road, that's the dilemma. And I guess that's the responsibility of the parents as far as making sure that their children are abiding by the laws and what the safety rules are. And part of the component here is to educate the community on this. The state law puts in place that any time that you buy a e-bike, there's going to be some material that's provided as far as the safe use of it by the distributor of the bicycle. So we're just trying to get ahead of this a little bit as far as making sure that we have, as best as we can, a safe summer so that these kids riding bikes are not going to be involved in accidents involving pedestrians on the sidewalks because they're going 20 miles an hour rolling down the street. So it's not comprehensive, but it's a good first step is what I'm recommending to you.
And if I can just follow up with that, the current Ohio Revised Code already prohibits the motor being engaged on the sidewalks. Nothing prohibits them from using the bikes on the sidewalk. It's just using the bikes on the sidewalk with the motor engaged. So they can still ride or use the scooter with human power. They just can't use it with motor power on the sidewalks as the law is currently written.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead.
Since Mr. Dever, you mentioned parental responsibility, I noticed 37303 refers to the right the parents must ensure that their children follow these laws. What's the penalty if a parent doesn't follow that?
Well, I guess it would be a delinquency kind of filing or a citation that would be given to the parents that the child who violates the traffic law would receive a citation just like anybody else. Jurisdiction for that citation would be the Cuyahoga County Juvenile Court. As far as a parent that knowingly allows a child to recklessly operate a motor or operate a bicycle, then that would fit into those, I guess, definitions of either child endangering or neglect of a child, or those crimes that are already on the book under Title 29.
So there's no specific penalty though for those
No,
parentals?
no.
Thank you.
So I have two additional questions. The first question is, if education is part of the goal, I understand this doesn't help us during the summer, but once we get back into school, is this a program that our SRO could be heavy-handed in with the education aspect?
So Officer McLaughlin and I have already discussed this, and coming into the next school year, we are planning on addressing it at the schools.
Okay.
So yes, the short answer is yes, it is something that we can address at the schools, and we are working on doing. Part of the information that I provided with you guys tonight with those handouts, we'll probably have a condensed version of that, which we can provide at that time, but it is something that we have to work on through the summer.
Okay. And then this, I think, is my last question before I really open it up. Again, always reserving the right. So if we have juveniles who are perhaps, and if this is not a good example, please correct me, because I want the best understanding. Let's say that they are operating one of these bikes under motor power on the sidewalk, and they are stopped by the police, and they are now cited. They would get a traffic ticket?
So this is something that, it already occurs, and we're not issuing citations to juveniles. We're typically contacting parents and having them either come get the device or have them walk it home, something along those lines. I am not aware of anyone who has cited a juvenile for that. So that's kind of where the education aspect comes into play. One of the accidents we had, which was minor, back in the spring, involved an 11 or 12-year-old that had an accident with one of these on a sidewalk with the motor engaged. Some of the caveats to these devices is the legal requirement under the Ohio Revised Code is that the motors can't be more powerful than 750 watts, and this was a 1,500 watt motor, so capable of going 40 miles an hour on a sidewalk. So even in that situation, and given the fact that that there was no serious injury or no serious property damage, it was an education effort where we had that device returned to mom. We educated mom, we educated the child. And to my knowledge, she was very receptive to it, but to my knowledge, he hasn't been back out on that device. Obviously, I don't know that for sure, but I am familiar with that child, and I haven't seen him back on it. So I think that there is some effectiveness to that approach in our safety efforts.
Okay. And I like that approach. I like the education. I like the teaching responsible usage of things that are available, right? But let's say then, let me step it up a notch. Let's say this 11-year-old is headed to the Gemini Center, comes Clifford to 212th, runs the red light at 212th across Lorraine Road. We have two cars get into an accident, right? At this point, you've got reckless operation, ran a red light, we've got personal injury, we've got all of these things. Let's assume then we issue a citation to mom and child, or to dad and child, whoever, right? How does this affect long-term? I go to get my driver's license, and now I already have these citations for operating a vehicle that is not, like, are there ties there?
No, there's no points assessed for the violations of these. They are still unclassified misdemeanors. You're still going to have the fine for the violation of the traffic rules, but you don't get the points.
Okay.
Okay, so your driving abstract is not going to be affected other than that you're going to have a citation on your record. So there would be twofold that the path would follow. If it's an unruly child that gets the citations from the police, his destiny will be decided in the juvenile court. And whether or not we have a diversion program already in place here, so that Rocky River Police, or the Fairview Police, try to work this through locally with the prosecutor as opposed to sending it to Cuyahoga County because of the level of problems that they have over there. The parents who get citations like that would end up over in the Rocky River Court for the violation of properly supervising the child, or if they had an awareness that the kid was going to take the bike and he was going to go and run red lights and do all of that. So the mechanism is in place already, and we're not putting an additional burden. It's always been, how do we educate and not put this huge burden on the police, other than to be making sure that as best as they can protect the public safety by taking these 25-mile-an-hour bikes riding down the roadway or down the sidewalk with other people who are out there.
Okay. And I'm all for, like I said, I'm all for accountability. I'm all for increasing safety. What I'm trying to do is make sure that we are thinking long-term about all of the implications of this change, not just today there's bikes on the sidewalk and tomorrow there's not, right? Just making sure that we're not setting anyone up for
Yeah.
failure long-term with these changes. So I appreciate that explanation. Okay, I will take it down. Anyone on council have?
Actually, two things popped
Yeah.
into my head while they were talking. The first one, Steve, picking up on what you were mentioning, that this didn't include things like a motorized wheelchair or a senior's like scooter. How is that carve out? Where is that covered under? I was looking through the ordinances and I couldn't find anywhere where those were specifically addressed.
Yeah.
So it got me wondering, like, how does a senior citizen on a scooter drive without the motor being engaged on the sidewalk? So that was something that
Well,
popped into my
If
head.
it's a wheelchair, it's carved out into the revised code in the state statute.
Okay.
And then play vehicles, and I say play vehicles are, the G.I. Joe Jeep or the Barbie Jeep that,
Yeah.
the 5-year-old is riding around. Those are not covered here. But again, as more technology goes to these transportation
Right.
vehicles, we're going to have to catch up with that.
I was just trying to think about the law of unintended consequences coming into play here. And then the second one, kind of as Sarah was talking to Matt, when we do have those instances where you do have a juvenile who has been, in your case, you call the parent and you have the parent come walk the bicycle or the e-bike home, and then you have the same juvenile that is stopped another time, and this time maybe they knocked somebody over on the sidewalk, and you now have a bodily injury issue involved, which is, a second quote-unquote offense. And then there's another offense. At what point do we cross over to this is a child who clearly is not capable of operating this device safely, and the parent keeps giving the child access to this device despite the history? At what point do we have the ability or the responsibility to impound that juvenile's device to protect and ensure the safety of the residents?
Right, so, we're gonna handle everything on a case-by-case basis. There's not gonna be a blanket answer for that situation, because every situation is going to be different. There are requirements under the Ohio Revised Code as far as when we are allowed and when we are not allowed to seize something as a vehicle. Typically, an e-bike is not going to be considered a motor vehicle, and so right now, under the Ohio Revised Code, it's not technically subject to seizure in the same regard. There are exceptions to that, but again, they're going to be on a case-by-case basis. So it would be the totality of the circumstances depending on what circumstances were actually involved when that happened. So I can't give you a blanket answer because they're all going to be different.
Right. And not being an attorney, at what point does that parental responsibility come into play where we could start assessing any type of penalty or imposition on the responsible parent? Is there, like, Steve, is there any recourse that we could?
In the event that the
create?
parent is careless, reckless, negligent, and is on notice that this is a problem, then the Rocky River Court has the jurisdiction on that, and there are conditions of that depending on what level of a misdemeanor. In some instances, it could go to the felony level, and then you have various tools.
there
as far
are-
as- Yeah.
Sorry, so there are kind of steps or progressions in
Right.
place that could cover those types of scenarios? All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Councilwoman Waring?
Yes, please.
When you asked the question about, you give your 10-year-old an e-bike, and we want them operating in the street, there is a provision in here where, let's see, it's 37308, and it is proposed letter E. At no time shall a bicyclist under the age of 12 operate a bicycle, a motorized bicycle, a moped, an electric bike, or an electric personal assistive mobility device, or even a low-speed micro mobility device in the street. So, with that law, it makes no sense for a parent to buy anybody under the age of 12 an electric bike, because they will always have to use it on the sidewalk without the motor engaged. But it also made me think last week when Councilman Lang was talking about trimming the vegetation on the island on the street, how the kids were out in the street riding around. Depending on the age of those kids, that could be a citable offense, but I do have some other questions that came up. Specifically, I wasn't sure what was meant by a low-speed micro-mobility device. And when I looked it up online, I saw an infographic put out by the city of Asheville, North Carolina, and it showed not just some of those, little electric scooters or whatever, the one wheels. It also showed like a razor scooter and a skateboard and rollerblades as a low-speed micro-mobility device. And comparing that to our definition, our proposed definition, it doesn't rule those out. And I know there are adults that rollerblade through my neighborhood. So that adds some weirdness to some of these. For example, about having to dismount if you're going to be on a congested sidewalk.
To walk by, yes.
Yes. So, do you have to take your rollerblades off? Do you have to have little headlamps or, little red blinking rear lights? They do make them for rollerblades,
Yeah.
for skateboards and that type of thing. Is that actually meant to be part of the laws that we're writing here?
Well, what we were trying to mirror is what the state is using as a definition.
Mhm.
But these are all good questions that would deserve a relook at this before the end of the year, once we get more direction from state law and whatever National Transportation, Department of Transportation from the federal government, what they're coming back with as well, so that we have, some further direction on this,
Okay.
right?
Also, I wondered about, it said if you are using your device in the street, you have the rights and responsibilities of a driver of a car. If you're on the sidewalk, you have the rights and responsibilities of a pedestrian. And you have to stop at all the lights and stop signs and all that. However, in the case of a malfunctioning signal, you no longer have the same rights as somebody driving a vehicle, because it said you have to yield to any other vehicles at or approaching the intersection. I can understand if it's simply that it's one of those detection cameras that cannot tell that you're there at the light, and so does not switch to give you a green light. I could see why you would want to, nobody else is going to be stopping. So, but I wonder about giving up your right to proceed through the intersection, to have the right of way on your e-bike, if, because it puts the onus on the person using the e-bike, if something happens, it makes them sound like they're at fault, when really, if they have the rights of a driver, they should also have the right of way.
Right, but there was a carve-out created in the ordinance itself originally for bicycles when you had malfunctioning traffic lights, and the obligation of the bicyclist to go through the intersection, that they had the responsibility to look and make the crossing. Officer, I think that was under, when you had the, under 373, let me look at the section here.
Oh, 37305.
05, right. So what we did there is we took what you have as existing 37305 and then added into the e-bikes to be similarly as to the duties that are placed on a bicyclist. That-
And we're keeping that because that's what the state has
That's what you've had on an ordinance
in Fairview.
in Fairview from, the books that I went back and looked to are well into the early 80s that you had that on the books.
I mean, obviously, if I'm on a bike and I'm worried that I might not be able to cross the intersection safely without someone running me over, you know, I'm going to wait. But if I see somebody's coming and I believe I can cross and it goes poorly, I'm just concerned about relieving the driver of a car of responsibility for having that accident.
But the driver still has the obligation to avoid the risk. There's that whole doctrine of last clear chance. You can't, because you see somebody in the crosswalk that doesn't belong there or shouldn't be, or should be yielding to you, you gotta respond appropriately as well. You cannot use that as an excuse as to that the accident, that you did not contribute to the accident. There's levels of negligence involved in that.
Okay, so the person on the bike is not necessarily going to
Right.
bear
It
responsibility for
places the
that.
duty on them, but it still has the duty for the driver to operate his vehicle safely.
Okay,
And when he observes a peril or a reasonable driver under similar circumstances observed that that there's some danger in front of them, they have an obligation to respond.
okay, okay. Let's see, what else did I have a question about? Okay, that's pretty much all the questions that I had. Everything else has already been asked, so thank you.
I do have one additional one. So in the ordinance, I have to go back and find it. Under 373.2 electric bicycles, and then I believe it's provision B2. It says that any person under the age of 18 shall operate or be a passenger must wear a protective helmet.
Yes.
Makes sense 100% for electric bicycles. Am I missing it, or do we not have a helmet clause for non-electric bicycles?
I believe we already have a helmet clause where you had the program last year where you're giving ice cream cones out to.
We do that annually.
Yeah.
We encourage it, and I would have to look, but if there is a clause, I want to say the age is not 18. I think it's 13 or 12, but I would have to verify that. But the language that's being proposed is for anybody under 18 on the e-bikes are going to be required to wear a helmet.
I guess I'm questioning if the end goal here is safety, then should we also be considering taking a look at helmet laws for non-electric bikes? Knowing that, yes, the chance of injury is higher, and we have had more incidents with electric bikes, but the chance of injury is still there on.
Well,
regular
this,
bicycle.
yeah, well, this would apply to regular bikes as well. Anybody under 18 would have to wear a helmet.
It says any class electric bicycle.
And bicycles as well, to fit into this section there.
Well, that's
The-
why I'm
yeah.
looking. It doesn't look like that's what it says. I just want to make sure that I'm clear because the way that I'm reading it, it's only for electric bicycles. And I'm not sure 18 is the right age for a regular bicycle, right? But
Yeah.
I think that's worth the debate.
It's just not underlined because it's not being changed.
Right. So that if you look at 37302, it says code application to bicycles, so it already applies to bicycles. And then we are adding into that motorized bikes, mopeds, electric bikes, low-speed micromobility devices, etc. Okay?
But where does it say that you require a helmet?
Give me a second, I'll give you that section.
So I think I saw it under point 2, but it specifically states electric bicycles. So if I am a parent reading that, I'm not going to read the entire 373.02, right? I'm gonna go to control find helmet, and then that's what I'm gonna read. So
Okay.
I'm trying to think about how do we make, I'm a huge proponent of making the law accessible to normal people, especially in a skimmed, and Control F world, right? Because we aren't citing people now for not wearing helmets on bicycles. We instead have the, hey, you wore it, let's get you an ice cream cone.
Yeah, we have the safety tickets that we hand out every year, and
What is it?
we had a community event at Vulcan
Okay,
earlier this
thank
year where we
you.
actually gave out helmets. So we, again, we're encouraging safety, but we're not necessarily discouraging, use of bikes or unsafe behavior. So yeah, we try to encourage it. I don't know that there's anything that we actually have to enforce not wearing a helmet.
Does the Ohio Reserve Code require helmets at any age for bikes?
I
No,
don't believe so.
no one in Ohio.
It doesn't require it for motorcycles.
True, okay.
Are you able to ride a motorcycle under the age of 18?
Yes,
You can get a motorcycle license at 16?
you can have the class 3, the e-bike class 3, which is fully engaged motor, 16 and over. Is that right, Sergeant?
16 and over.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Like, does it apply to bicycles or does it not apply to bicycles if they are not electric?
Steve,
Yeah.
37320,
Is it 2B?
B2, 20B2,
373.20.
20B2.
Okay, let me pull that up.
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying that it says specifically any class electric bicycle. So if we're gonna say that this entire thing applies to any kind of bicycle, regardless of electric bicycle, then why would we write any class electric bicycle as opposed to any bicycle including electric bicycles or some other way that, because to me, it was not clear that we were going to put a helmet on people operating regular bicycles until, I believe you said that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, so we could have the ability to amend this to make sure that it includes the bicycle as well for 18 and under.
And that's the
For a
intention
helmet.
of this.
Yeah, that's what I meant somehow that in the drafting of it, that term bicycle was not included under that section. But this would go to encompass bicyclists as well as the e-bikers, as well as the scooters, the skateboards, all of those folks. Thanks.
So are you saying that you want to have helmets on anyone under the age of 18 on a bike or e-bike?
I'm saying that's what was presented at the beginning of the meeting,
Right.
that is part of the intention, but that's not what
Is
is
that
outlined here in this.
enforceable? Would you stop any child that you would see not with a helmet on?
As right now, it's not written into code that way, so currently, no. We don't have that ordinance.
Is it enforceable if we would make it an ordinance?
I mean, if you make it an ordinance, yes.
But you'd have to go through an education process, first of all, before you started issuing citations on that. So that's part of what the State House bill is addressing, is
Okay.
the education component.
You know, and again, operationally, our intent is not to be writing juveniles tickets. It's to keep them safe while they're on bikes.
Madam Chair?
Please.
I think it's a great idea to protect children. If you're 18 and over, obviously, you're an adult, you make a decision whether you're going to be wearing a helmet or not on your bike. But it does seem kind of weird if the state allows a 16-year-old to drive a motorcycle or ride a motorcycle without a helmet, but if you're going to ride an e-bike or a bicycle, it's just, you know what I'm saying?
I believe, at least it used to be in the state of Ohio, you had to wear a helmet until you were the age of 18 on a motorcycle. And after the age of 18, then you were no longer required.
Oh, because that was what I was just asking, if you were 16.
That's not the case any longer?
You have to, are we discussing motorcycles or bicycles? On a class 3 bicycle.
Both.
If you're on a class 3 bicycle under the age of 18, you have to wear a helmet. So you can't ride one until you're 16, but you have to wear a helmet for a class 3 bicycle.
And for a motorcycle?
For a motorcycle, you have to wear a helmet if you're on the temporary permit for it. So even as a beginner rider, as a permit rider for a motorcycle, you have to wear eyewear and a helmet.
Regardless of your age as a novice
Correct.
rider? Okay.
Correct.
But how long does that period last?
Until you get your endorsement for a motorcycle.
Okay, what's the general time? How long does it take to get your endorsement?
That depends on when you take the test. That depends on the individual rider.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking is it possible that somebody under the age of 18 could have their motorcycle certification and be riding without a helmet?
I would have to verify that. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't have an answer for you.
okay. You found it?
You get the answer?
Says anyone who holds a novice motorcycle operator's license, which is issued for the first year of riding, must wear a helmet regardless of age.
Okay, so somebody could be 17 and ride a motorcycle, like as the operator, and not have to wear a helmet because we don't require them for motorcycles in the state of Ohio. Okay. It's a little bit of incongruity between our laws then if we pass it this way and the state law, but, you know, like I said, I definitely support protecting children when it comes to wearing helmets, whether they're on a bicycle or an e-bike.
And that's why the state doesn't preempt this as far as the ability of communities to make their own rules on these electric bikes and bike helmets. So they haven't preempted this subject yet, so you have the ability to do that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Anyone else?
I have one more question based on one of Mr. Lang's questions, actually, regarding the worst case offenders where we have people who are, repeat offenders coming back and forth, and whether we could forfeit anything they're driving. Don't we have the authority under the revised code to add a provision here that says we can forfeit the instrumentality of the crime, which would be the money?
You could put that into there, but we didn't put that into this, because
Why not?
I was more concerned about getting volunteer compliance and dealing with the most important issues, and I thought that there was sufficient remedies under Ohio law where you have those instances of deliberate wrongdoing where a parent is not providing proper supervision, that either under child endangering code or some other section under the Title 29 would get you where you wanted to be.
It just seems to me like if there's a really bad offender out there, we should take
Right,
the
or you
bike.
could seize the bike, and,
Yeah.
right?
And we have the ability to do that with the
Right.
provision here.
So we can come back to this, like I said, at the end of the year and do even more of a comprehensive look, if you like.
So, if I can maybe add on to that, are we open to any sort of legal liability if, for instance, the scenario that Pat had laid out, where we have an offender, we talk to them. We have an offender, we talk to them, we re-educate the parents. We have an offender, something happens, we have an offender, and now somebody has gotten severely hurt in that, whether it's the child or, you know, he hits granny on the sidewalk, whatever it is. Are we now potentially liable for knowing that there was a problem with that offender and not taking the bike, not issuing a ticket, and just continuing down that education path?
I don't believe so. I think the immunity statute covers all of those issues. Of course, there is always the case where somebody would say that police had a knowledge of wrongdoer, that this had been a constant problem and failed to enforce the law, and try to bring a claim on that. But I'm generally thinking that that would be something that a summary judgment motion would be granted on.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may. I brought up earlier about how the low-speed micromobility devices could include rollerblades and, you know, skateboards, razor scooters. And I know that sounds ridiculous about how you have to, like, walk across, you can't skate across crosswalks and things like that. Like, you have to, and even that you're supposed to have a signaling device that makes some kind of a noise that isn't a siren. And so I'm tempted on the one hand to say, well, that seems like overkill. Maybe we should, like, specifically say this does not include these items. But I'm not going to ask to protect those devices, because I personally was driving down Brook Park Road one day where I think the speed limit might have even been 50 miles an hour. And I had the light, and I saw a teenage kid on rollerblades crossing the road on Brook Park against the light. And he came across the lanes for traffic coming towards me, and I realized if he kept going, I would hit this child, and I was going pretty fast because it is a high speed limit there. And he started to blow through the median. He was not able to stop, and at the last second, he put his hand out. There happened to be a street sign there. He grabbed a hold of the pole, and at the last second saved himself from going out into the road in front of me and swung around back onto the median. So there is the potential there for even those small roller devices to have really tragic consequences. So I just think it's important then that we're going to educate the public that those types of devices are technically included if we make these changes.
Any further questions, comments? So it sounds like we have a couple of things here that are still potentially of concern. The first thing is, how does that helmet carve-out apply to non-motorized bicycles? The legislation is not clear. And second, the potential for adding a clause regarding being able to seize the instrument of the crime. So I guess my question is, the intention of these two ordinances was to put them up for first read and emergency passage last week. We put a pause on that, came in to discuss them this evening. From the administration's standpoint, do you believe that this is ready to pass? Do you believe that there are changes that need to be made? Where do you stand after this discussion?
My 2 cents is we make an amendment to this to include in the terminology for bicycle to expand the helmet requirement to anyone operating a e-bike or a bike or a scooter or all of that, inclusive for 18 and under with the helmet requirement. To make that amendment and then go forward with the legislation as it is, with the understanding that you're going to be back here in the fall once we have further direction from the state.
Okay. So if this was passed, what strength does the police department gain from enforcement that they didn't previously have if education is the primary goal?
The language in the ordinance right now doesn't address anything about e-bikes. So it basically, if we see unsafe behavior on a bike and we can reasonably say that we believe it's an e-bike, it gives us the ability to stop that person on the bike and at least have that conversation with them. So it's something that doesn't exist in ordinance now. It would give us the ability to be able to do that.
Okay.
Whether the end result is enforcement or education.
Okay, and I asked that question primarily to understand if we're coming back in the fall,
Right.
you know, what are we gaining by putting this up for passage tonight?
Right.
And it sounds like we're gaining the additional conversation and opportunity to talk with residents and explain, here's what this should look like throughout the summer months where we're going to see more of these, versus if we were to do this in the fall, you know, well, maybe late fall, where they start maybe getting put away, right? So it does strengthen that ability over the course of the summer, and I wanted to make sure that I was clear on that.
Right. The twofold is what I was looking for as far as why I had concern about it. The helmet issue for safety because of the proliferation of these bikes, young children, and secondly, getting the motorized version of the bike off of the sidewalk so that the pedestrian is not in danger with 3 kids riding down the Lorraine Road on their way to the ice cream shop and people walking there and, you know, that kind of danger, to eliminate that.
Okay. Can you provide the language for that amendment?
Yes.
Okay. So then, any further discussion by council before I make a motion?
I'm not sure if I'm ready to talk about amending a helmet law to cover everyone under the age of 18 at this point. This is being put out in the public as an e-bike legislation. That's what I think we should keep the focus on. If we make this an under 18 for everybody who riding a bike, that's a different kind of law. So that's my concern on that particular amendment. I think that it's a good point about there being gaps in the current law, which is why it's necessary to pass this now. I think this starts closing gaps that I'd like to close some more in the fall, and particularly regarding that forfeiture issue.
So you would, the only helmet requirement would be for the e-bikes and mobility devices and leave the bicycles out of this
Right,
at
correct.
this point in time?
Because I think parents have different obligations on that, they have different thoughts on it. So that's just kind of my view on the helmet issue.
Sure.
But that's my 2 cents on it. I think I'm ready to pass it now. I just think that we're going to have to do some more cleanup in the fall.
Okay. So regarding the helmets then, I'm going to phrase my motion in the way that this was presented by the administration. So please vote your conscience on that. It is, you know, however you best feel. But it did appear that the intention from the administration, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we would have this helmet carve out to the non-motorized bicycles. So thus, I'm going to make a motion that we apply an amendment to the current legislation to carve out a helmet law for non-motorized bicycles for those under the age of 18.
So as a clarity then, to include a helmet requirement for bicycles as well as electric bicycles? Is that what your
Correct.
intention is? Okay.
And I think that one's in 37320. So that's 2642. Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'll give a minute for everybody to think about their thoughts. Pat? I'll give a second minute for everybody to think about their thoughts. Because I know that this is, again, we have not had the opportunity to think or fully discuss or think about it. To Mr. Rayleigh's point that we will need to come back to this in the fall.
With the understanding that this will be revisited in the fall, I will vote yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Ms. King,
Yes.
Ms. Waring, yes. Mr. Rayleigh,
No.
and Ms. Mann.
Yes.
Okay. So motion passes to 4, 5, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5 to 1. Had to remember how many of us were here. Okay, so then, Law Director Dever, if you could provide that amendment before we go into the special meeting, that would be very helpful.
Okay. Yes, if you give me a moment on that.
Yep, yeah, before we go into the special meeting, so you have a little bit of time.
All right.
So that being said, I would like to make a motion to place ordinance 2641 up for second reading and emergency passage.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Pat,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah, yes, Rick,
Yes.
and Kim.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. I can count this time. And then I would also like to make a motion to place ordinance 2642 up for second reading and emergency passage this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Pat,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Sarah, yes, Rick,
Yes.
and Kim.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0. That being said, local government and community services will end at 8:57 p.m.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sergeant, for coming in tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to boards and commission reports. Do you have anything, Pat?
Nothing.
Bill?
Thank you, Council President. The Board of Control met this morning, June 22nd, 2026, at 10 a.m. at the Fairview Park Senior Center, 20769 Lorraine Road. All members of the board were present. Also present were Senior Life Director Laura Brandos and Recreation Director Carrie Kemp, and also Henry Chasky, Executive Assistant to the Mayor. 5 items were discussed. Item 1, Recreation Department is requesting $10,257.43, adding $4,500 for office furniture to open purchase order of $5,757.45. Director Kemp stated the furniture is for the new aquatics director. Motion to pay $10,257.43 to National Business Furniture from the Recreation Fund 230 and Special Hold Fund 611 was approved 5-0. Item 2, Recreation Department is requesting $17,750 for new playground rubber repairs at outdoor aquatics areas. Director Kemp stated this is for the outdoor splash parks. Motion to pay $17,750 to American Recreation from the Recreation Fund 230 was approved 5-0. Item 3, Recreation Department is requesting $34,941.28, adding $24,285.78 for 3 6-foot Paragon lifeguard chairs and splash pad supplies. Total purchase order of $10,655.50. Director Kemp stated this is for 3 additional chairs, no benches. Motion to pay $34,941.28 to Heritage Pool Supply Reconnaissance from the Recreation Fund 230 was approved 5-0. Recreation Department is requesting $5,300, adding $500 for splash pad parts. Total purchase order of $4,800. Director Kemp stated the splash pads must be replaced. Motion to pay $5,300 to the Site 1 Landscape from the General Fund 100 and Recreation Fund 230 was approved 5-0. Item 5, Senior Life Service is requesting $25,000, adding $17,720 for city door repairs, open purchase order of $7,280. Director Brando stated this is for the front doors to the senior center to remove and replace the hardware. Motion to pay $25,000 to advance door from the General Fund 100 and Recreation Fund 230 was approved 5-0. This completes my report.
Excellent, thank you. Boards and commission reports, Sarah?
Thank you, no report this evening.
Rick?
Nothing remains.
Kim?
Thank you, Council President. The Planning and Design Committee met Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. Members in attendance included Mayor Schneider, Ralph Protano, Council at Large Kim Mann, and Tom Povich. The committee had quorum, and Mayor Schneider chaired the meeting. Also in attendance were Leanne Fuller, Walt Maynard, and Tim Castell. 3 items were on the agenda. Docket 6-26-12P. The office building at 21055 Lorraine Road experienced major storm damage in March, including loss of the roof. Emergency repairs were made and repainting was done to create a uniform color with the repaired trim. It was then decided the brick needed to be painted to complement the trim color. No permit was pulled at the time of the renovations. The committee reviewed the surrounding structures to determine if the new appearance blends sufficiently. The committee moved to approve the completed work, and the motion passed unanimously. Docket 6-26-13P. The Board of Education is requesting permission to consolidate lots and construct a new fence along the north boundary at their property. The building at 21620 Mastic Road was constructed overlapping 2 parcels. The old fence is unsightly and has become overgrown with vegetation. The new fence will be black vinyl-coated chain link. The committee moved to approve the parcel consolidation, and the motion was unanimously approved. The committee approved the fence installation as presented, and the motion passed unanimously. Docket 6-26-14P. The business at 22965 Lorraine is requesting approval of exterior renovations to the first floor facade of the residential type structure that includes replacement of 3 windows with Energy Star picture windows and installation of cultured stone veneer. The committee moved to approve, and the motion passed unanimously. The mayor welcomed Tom Povich to the committee. Mr. Povich replaces Jen Kramer, who was appointed to the Civil Service Commission. Mr. Maynard reported that the city has not heard from the owners of 21405 Lorraine. Their application for tree removal, docket 526-11P, had been deferred to this month. The Gemini project is wrapping up. Ohio Department of Health and the county have been out to inspect the work. Nothing Bunt Cake received their occupancy certificate. The former location of Connect Hearing is ready to reopen as Martin Chiropractic. There is a new home being built on a parcel on West 229 that has never been previously developed. The library seeks permitting for an interior-exterior renovation to create a new book drop at the building's northeast corner. Residential inspections are being conducted but will proceed slowly until another inspector is hired. This concludes my report.
Thank you. The Rec Commission met on Wednesday, 6/17. It's 6 p.m. and we discussed the weekend, the opening weekend. So please join us this Friday, 5 p.m. for ribbon cutting. And the weekend is full of activities and interesting new classes that are in the pool, including a luau with the DJ and prizes on Saturday night. Okay, roundtable. Anything for roundtable, Pat?
Happy 20th birthday to my son and happy anniversary to you.
Oh, well, thank you. Bill?
Nothing, thank you.
Sarah?
Well, happy birthday and happy anniversary. Can't leave those go. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick?
Thank you for excusing me from last week's meeting. I had a great time in South Carolina.
Good. Kim, anything for roundtable?
Yes, a resident reached out with concerns about the pool liner last Monday. Due to technical issues, I didn't see the email until Thursday. I inspected the pools on Friday morning and had a conversation with Evan from Welty Construction about the condition of the liners. The competition pool appears fine. It's filled with water, but I could see no obvious folds or wrinkles. The leisure pool was in the process of being refilled. As Evan explained it to me, the pool had to be drained and a section of liner had to be cut and patched because it developed wrinkles as the liner partially overlapped an air jet and air was blown under it. At the time, I took this to mean the liner was improperly installed, but it occurs to me now that it's possible that the liner, being pliable, commonly shifts as the pool fills and fittings or openings need to be adjusted. This would be a good question for Ms. Nozick, the pool architect. I did reach out to her Friday to ask about the integrity of the liner patch, especially since a corner of the patch has additional thickness where it lays over another seam. She left me a message today assuring me that these patches are common in pools with complex curves, and the seams on the patches are as good as the seams in other places where liner sheets are joined. She also told me we have a 1-year warranty on this if a problem develops. Today, I spoke with the law director to ask when the administration knew of the wrinkles needing repair, because the last I heard Wednesday evening, the pools were filled and ready for the opening. But that was not the case on Friday morning, and I had to hear it from a resident. So I wondered if the administration didn't know as of Wednesday night that repairs would necessitate draining the leisure pool. Director Dever told me he'd been aware of the liner issue since at least June 14th. I have no expertise on pool construction. It's not my job to meet with our owner's rep to address the inevitable hiccups during the build. But as a member of council, I should not be told we're good to go when we're not only because I may have to respond to a resident who knows more about it than I do, but also because we all want this project to succeed. Transparency is especially important on the work at the Gemini, given the history of the building. Despite being caught on my back foot, I am reassured that all eyes are on the work being done and your interests are being protected. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Liz, anything for roundtable?
I just have one thing, because we do need to have another special meeting for a piece of legislation for the additional funding for Center Ridge. And there's another piece also coming for something with ODOT. So is everyone available? Like, I just kind of need to get a date when we're going to be able to have a quorum. And they're going to be asked to be passed on emergency, so we would need 5 people, so.
Will the legislation be available by next Monday, or are we looking more into July? Steve, or?
It's my understanding it would be available by Monday.
Okay.
So is
So
everybody
could
okay
we
with
just go down?
Monday?
I'm available.
Next Monday? Bill, next Monday?
Yes, I'm available.
Sarah?
I'm like 90% yes.
Okay, Rick?
Without running it by my true boss, my wife, I'm pretty sure I can do that.
Kim?
I will be out of town.
Okay.
What time?
Next, well,
Is 6:30 too early, Rick, or is that okay?
7 would be, well, 6, either one would work.
Okay.
so we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah.
Yeah,
and then
exactly 5.
Okay.
I'm not sure when Troy's back from her vacation.
All right, well, let's get with Troy and see, and then
Okay.
send that out. Okay,
Yep.
perfect. Is that everything?
Yep, that's it. Sorry.
All right, we're now going to move into our special council meeting. This, oh. All right, the special meeting of council of the City of Fairview Park for Monday, June 22nd, 2026 is now called to order. There'll be a moment of silent reflection. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the clerk please call roll?
Mr. Lang.
Present.
Mr. Minnick.
Here.
Ms. Greenfield, absent. Mrs. King.
Yes, here.
Mrs. Waring.
Here.
Mr. Raley.
Here.
Mrs. Mann.
Here.
I will now make a motion to excuse Councilwoman Greenfield from today's meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Will the clerk please call roll on the motion?
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Minnick.
Yes.
Mrs. King.
Yes.
Mrs. Waring.
Yes.
Mr. Raley.
Yes.
Mrs. Mann.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Are there any written communications, petitions, or claims?
No.
All right. Please and second reading. Emergency. Okay, it's now time for audience input on legislation that is up for passage tonight. Nope, okay. All right, moving right along. Legislation up for passage without three readings. Councilwoman Waring.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to place ordinance 2641 up for emergency passage this evening.
Will the clerk please read the title?
Ordinance 2641, requested by Mayor Bill Schneider, sponsored by Councilwoman Waring. An ordinance amending Section 310.04, bicycle, motorized bicycle, moped, electric bicycle of the codified ordinances of the City of Fairview Park to include additional regulations concerning the operation of electric bicycles and electric scooters and declaring an emergency.
Councilwoman Waring.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to make a motion to suspend charter provision and Rule 49 requiring three readings and place ordinance 2641 up for passage this evening.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, will the clerk please call roll on the motion?
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh,
Yes.
Mrs. Mann,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Prior to final passage, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, will the clerk please call roll on final passage of ordinance 2641?
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh,
Yes.
Mrs. Mann,
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2641 passes. Councilwoman Waring.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to place ordinance 2642 up for emergency passage this evening.
Amended?
I'm sorry. I'd like to place ordinance 2642 amended up for passage this evening.
It's not amended yet.
Oh, what's that? Oh,
How are we passing it without an amendment?
well, I would do that in discussion. So, all right, let me start over. I'd like to place ordinance 2642 up for emergency passage this evening.
Okay, so moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Will the clerk please call roll on the motion?
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh,
Yes.
Mrs. Mann,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Any further discussion before final passage of ordinance 2642?
Council President, if I may?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to suspend charter provision and Rule 49 requiring three readings and place this up for emergency passage this evening.
Second.
Didn't we just vote on that?
Did I?
No.
did
For the
I do
last
so I-
one.
the suspension, you should be
doing that.
I'm sorry.
The amendment now.
Okay. This is what happens when I don't get time to practice, right? All right. Council President, I'd like to make a motion to amend section 373.20B2 to add the words bicycle or, so that in full section it reads, 2, no person under 18 years of age shall operate or be a passenger on a bicycle or any class electric bicycle unless the person is wearing a protective helmet that meets the standards established by the Consumer Product Safety Commission or the American Society for Testing and Materials.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call roll on the motion?
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh,
No.
Mrs. Mann,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Prior to final passage, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call roll on passage of ordinance 2642? Amended.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh,
Yes.
Mrs. Mann,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes and ordinance 2642 passes. Pursuant to Fairview Park Charter, Article 4, Section 7B, and Council Rule 5, no other subjects will be considered.
So moved.
There'll be no further business coming before council this evening. The chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
second? Will the clerk please call roll?
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Minnick,
Yes.
Mrs. King,
Yes.
Mrs. Waring,
Yes.
Mr. Rayleigh.
Yes.
Mrs. Mann.
Yes.
All right, the meeting is now adjourned.
So this is why you don't waste your time. Because she'll just say whatever she wants to say. Oh, is my mic on? That's stupid.